And killing innocent Palestinian civilians is a threat to humanity. And moreover, you can see the reluctant attitude and the lack of impartial views over the crisis by the international communities, including global powers, has worsened this crisis in past decades. Under this backdrop, the Center for Peace Studies at North-South University has organized this timely and very important discussion on the Israeli atrocity against the Palestinians. And without further delay, I would like to welcome you all to this very important webinar. And now I would like to hand over the session to Professor Tawfiq M. Haq to introduce the guest and moderate the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Bulbul. Assalamu alaikum, very good morning, and namaste. We have some of our Nepali friends and probably some of our Indian friends will also be joining, and from Sri Lanka also. So I again welcome you all to this webinar on Israeli atrocity against the Palestinians. Where is the humanity? We have a very distinguished panelist today in this webinar and very relevant panelist. So we have within us Professor Abdul Rabb Khan, Dean, School of Humanities and Social Sciences. We have Sir Jafar Sohan, Editor, Dhaka Tribune. And we have His Excellency Yusuf Ramadan, Ambassador of Embassy of State of Palestine. And then also we have Ambassador Shohidul Haq, who is a Professorial Fellow of South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance of North-South University. And then we are very delighted to have with us Ambassador Masood bin Momen, Foreign Secretary, People's Republic of Bangladesh. And the Vice Chancellor of North-South University, Professor Atikul Islam, is chairing this session. So I'm, as a moderator, just before giving the floor to the speakers, just tell you a little bit about the modality of the session. We will have a 10-minute speech by the panelists at the first round each, and then we will go for a question-answer session for half an hour. And then we will come back to the panelists again to have their opinion. And at the end, the Vice Chancellor, the chair of the session, will give his closing remarks. Since I do understand that there will be lots of interest and discourse, debate, and discussion on this topic. So to manage the time properly, I would request the participants to give their questions or comments in the chat box. We have our research associates. They will be collecting those and sending it to me, and then we will ask the questions accordingly. We might not be able to give chance to the other participants to speak in a live session, but we will try if we can get some extra time. So without further delaying, let me invite Professor Abdul Rabb Khan, the Dean of School of Humanities and Social Sciences of North-South University. He will be speaking on historical perspective of the Israeli atrocity against the Palestinians and the peace process. So, Professor Abdul Rabb Khan, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Tawfiq. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, and namaste to our distinguished panelists and also distinguished participants. Vice Chancellor of North-South University, Professor Atikul Islam, distinguished Foreign Secretary, and other participants, and Excellency Mr. Ramadan from the Embassy of Palestine. It's my pleasure to be a part of this very important webinar on atrocities against the Palestinians and where is the humanity. So this is a very interesting, very topical topic, and I thank the organizers of this seminar for this session and giving me the floor. So it's my pleasure to start. I will have a few slides to show, and as a fast mover, probably I might take a little bit more time. I just seek your forbearance for that. So let me just go for the sharing. Distinguished, is it visible on the screen is visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes.
Please carry on.
Thank you. Thank you. The title of the presentation is Historical Perspective of the Israeli Atrocity Against the Palestinians and the Peace Process. I just start with the present scenario. As you all know that there was an incident in East Jerusalem and Mosque, Alaska, where the Arab residents were forced out, and also there was violence against them. And as a reaction to that, there has been the violence spread all throughout Palestine, West Bank, Gaza. So, and there has been Israeli strikes and artillery barrages that over time, up to for the 11 days fighting, there were 227 Palestinians, including 64 children were killed, and also about 2,000 civilians were wounded. In the meantime, ceasefire has been effected, but sporadic violence is also continuing at the same time. So let me just start with identifying the key issues of this problem, which has been more than 100 years old problem. And there has been peace talks going on for the last 25 years. But the key issues that has been on the table and also moving around is whether there should be two state or one state. There has been agreement from some quarter, but the other side is disagreeing. So this problem remains, and still it has come to the fore now, but nobody knows, because no serious discussion on this particular vital issue, whether two state or one state, that will be in place. That is one. Next question is the Palestinian refugees. What should they, because they are living in Jordan, in Lebanon, Tunisia, and other places, and other parts of the Middle East, as well as spread through the world. So will they be able to come back to this place when the political solution is resolved? And then most tricky and most difficult problem looks to me is the Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank and Gaza. I'm just taking you to the map of this. This map will show that the place, the Arab part, the Palestinian part is very truncated part, West Bank, then Gaza, and then in Jerusalem there is East Jerusalem. So these are the places where the Palestinians are living. Of course, there are other parts of Israel they are also living. So this means basically these area, the dark area, is where the settlements of the Jewish has been taken place, and it has been increasing. And there is also political, polarization of these people who have come all the way from Europe and other places. They are more rightist. So this is going to create a much more problem of what happens to the forced settlements in West Bank, Gaza, and other parts, including East Jerusalem. So that is also a very big problem. So against this background, I will just briefly talk about the historical perspective of the latest round of Israeli atrocities, and also review the peace process in Palestine. And also toward the end of my presentation, I will take the lead from the title of the seminar, that is, where is the humanity? And also I will try to lead the queue as to what may happen in future when the global geopolitics is also changing in terms of shifting the focus or fulcrum of geopolitics from Middle East to the Indo-Pacific area. So these are some of the issues I will lead, kind of trying to set the tone of this very important webinar. So by way of, as I said, that it is more than 100 years old, and it is connected with contemporary and past global and regional politics. And in the meantime, just going back to the history, fundamental change took place in the status of the Palestine during First World War, especially since the Balfour Declaration of 1917, which proposed establishment of Palestine as a national home for the Jewish people. So that was a kind of major declaration that was made, and that the Jewish population of Israel and other parts of the world, they are hanging on to this issue as this slogan as their kind of Bible that is there. And then Britain also took over at the defeat of the Ottoman Empire as a kind of outcome of the First World War. Britain took over the kind of mandatory role of Middle East, and that also changed the scenario. And so the people have been living for ages, but there has been always kind of conflicts and uneasy kind of cohabitation between these two groups of people. And tensions between two peoples have been always there. And then between 20 to 40, 1940, there has been major immigration from the rest of the world, particularly in Europe, from the persecution and also after Second World War Holocaust. So violence has been continuing. And then came 1947, when with UN in place, then the UN took a decision that there will be two states separating Arab and the Jewish state, and Jerusalem would be. So that was the kind of UN resolution taken, and but that plan actually did not meet realization because of disagreement of the stakeholders. Important. So 1948, the ceasefire has been there, but the sporadic violence has been there. And then after that, there was again a major war in 1967. That also, I mean, over time, one important characteristic of this war from time to time has been more and more, territories of West Bank, Gaza, they has been occupied by Israel. And so, and the last one was 1973, when, of course, there was a major development in terms of, there was a kind of blockade of oil embargo against the West. So that led to some changes in terms of starting the peace process. And in fact, that led to the 1971, Camp David agreement. So that means the checkered history of Palestine. There has been always kind of confrontations, but there has been also major geographical and demographic changes in this place over time. So this is where, in fact, so over this time, there has been this dialogue going on as well. But in the meantime, the immigration of the population, as I mentioned, in fact, the argument has been that those, Palestinian people who have not been resident for a longer time, so they were not allowed to come back. So with this, on this ground, in fact, more and more expulsion of the Palestinians has taken place, and the vacated places and other places of West Bank, Gaza have been Jewish population has been settled. And so these settlements are going to be a major issue in the future, that what would happen to in the heart of the proposed Palestinian state, where would this population go? So that would be a major problem in the area. So this is basically, and the latest incident, as you know, has been, the forcing out of Arab residents in East Jerusalem in a kind of neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, and that led to this current scenario. So that is basically the problem that has been there. So just going to the question of the peace process that we say, we can say that a landmark has been 1970 Camp David Accords, which to a great extent normalized the relations between Israel and Egypt. And also I would say this took off the wind from the larger Arab-Israeli conflicts, and the conflicts rather fizzled out to spread out to different areas and localized conflicts. Now, and then came Israeli involvement in Lebanon conflicts that kind of expanded the scope of the conflict by its intervention, and then trying to oust the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, and Palestinians from Lebanon. So that spread the conflict to Lebanon. And then in 1980s, in fact, with the rise of the first Intifada, which in a sense catalyzed the process of the Oslo peace process in the larger playground of the global politics. Oslo Accord led to setting up a Palestinian Authority in 1994 within this Oslo peace process. And that became, in fact, the forerunner of the current Palestinian state. And then also other political changes also took place, like Jordan and Israel normalized relations. And then Arab League, in fact, took a decision that the other Arab countries can also normalize relations. So this also, but this peace process initiated with the Arab League did not make much headway in the meantime. So what happened in the meantime, there was a major conflict in Syria, the Syrian civil war, That also led to expansion of the this Middle East problem, and with that also Lebanon, Hezbollah was also involved, and Iranian involvement in the sense that the new dimension was added to this Arab-Israeli conflict with Iran and Israeli proxy here. So that in fact led to a lot of polarization. In the meantime, the other Arab countries in very recent time, in the last 1 or 2 years, the Middle Eastern Gulf states, in fact, through their own internal dynamics, also tried to establish their relations with Israel. So that led to newer twists and turns in the problem. So that also took place. And as I said, that several Gulf states normalized their relations. And of course, in the center stage of global politics, the Donald Trump's coming to power, that again kind of polarized events in the Middle East, that there was again rise of the concept of one state. But again, in recent times, this problem of one state and two state has been talked about, but no substantive discussion, unfortunately, has taken place in that. So the question here is that actually the ground reality today is apparently very simplistic, but it's not, much more complicated, in fact, because as you have seen, that there any time there is in the simplest pretext, the Israeli authority take the cue, and from there they in the resort to violence with their very sophisticated, very heavy weapons against Palestinian citizens, and that lead to kind of violence as we have seen in recent time. So the net outcome of the recently concluded 11-day conflict remains to be assessed, but pattern of Israeli atrocities on the Palestinians particularly remain as inhuman as ever. So question, I will just try to conclude my discussion into a question is that where is the humanity? Because so much of atrocities has been going on in the past as well as in recent times. But where has been world response to this kind of crisis? In the past, whenever there is any kind of incident took place, there was a kind of uproar. Not only in the civil society, in the part of the humanity, but also among the official circle of the supporters of Palestine. They shouted a lot of outcries, and they condemned the Israeli move. But this kind of the support and empathy of the international community to the cause of the Palestinians, in fact, unfortunately, is going down exponentially. And ironically, many veteran supporters of the Palestinian state have established diplomatic, as I have just mentioned, they established diplomatic relations and other relations with Israel in the meantime. In the corresponding international outcries against Israeli atrocities toward Palestinians are also getting muted. So the question is, we cannot say that humanity is completely dead. Of course, there has been, outcries from the civil society in particular all throughout the world. And there are also some kind of very feeble changes are taking place in the politics of USA, where we are seeing not only the people who have been traditionally supporters of Palestinian, but also other congressmen who has been traditionally supporters of Israel. They are also taking the, talking very, criticism of the Israel, and they are also saying that Israel has crossed the limits and they need to explain their behavior, particularly the damage of the big installation where it was housing two important media, this Al Jazeera and AP. So there has been international outcry from even in the corporate sector. Employees, Jewish employees like Apple, Google, they have been also asking their authority to take the cue from the international opinion and take measures in support of that. So there are some kind of question. But the question is that given the overwhelming military power of Israel, and it is backed by another overwhelming global power, question is that will such emerging support cut the ice? So that means, in fact, since it is a strong violence of heavy weapons and then backed by the global power, I think it needs there has to be some kind of strong response to that, and that is where in fact question is what can be done about this. So actually question is that in fact we can say that there is also other major changes in the Middle East, particularly because of the polarization so that is taking place, and global geopolitics is also shifting from Middle East to the Indo-Pacific and the eastern side. So that is what will happen in future. That remains a big question. Will the global powers like to take the solve the problem and then concentrate on the Indo-Pacific, or it will leave the problem as unresolved, and then, so therefore the problem will be further protracted and complicated, and the humanities will suffer, only the Palestinians will suffer. So this is where in fact I would like that the friends of Palestine, they rise the occasion. They may have changed their political alliance to an extent, but I think they take this advantage of putting pressure on Israel, and also the principled foreign policy stand for many countries, the friends of Palestine, like what has been that the inalienable rights of the Palestine to their homeland. So these kind of principles.
Thank you, Professor Rob.
Yeah, I'm almost done. Thank you very much. So I think these needs to be taken care of in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Abdul Rab Khan, Dean, School of Humanities and Social Sciences, for setting the tone of this whole discussion that is very important for, especially for our students who are joining here, to know about the historical context and also the peace process. And I'm sure this will help the other speakers to speak when this structure of the history would be in our mind. So I would now request Mr. Jafar Sovan, editor Dhaka Tribune, to come and speak on the role of media on the current escalation of Israeli-Palestine issue. Over to Mr. Jafar Sovan. Dr. Rob, can you just take out your screen from?
Yeah, I'm trying to do that.
Please, Mr. Jafar Sovan, please.
Thank you so much, and I would like to thank NSU for hosting this very important discussion. Now, my subject matter is the role of the media in the Israel-Palestine conflict. And I think in this context, perhaps it's the most relevant to examine the Western media, because I think over the past decade since 1948, when this conflict has come to center stage in the world, and is in fact in many ways defines the modern world in which we live, it has been seen through the lens of the Western media. And I think part of the problem we have faced, those of us in the developing world and those of us who have great sympathy and empathy for our Palestinian brothers and sisters, is that there has been a very one-sided media narrative in the Western media at large. And when I talk about the Western media, I mean primarily the US and the UK media, to some extent the European media. Now, this has changed over the years simply because once upon a time, Western media dominated the entire media narrative around the world. So you had BBC, you had CNN, you had afterwards Fox News. All of the global media entities were Western. And this, of course, changed with the advent of Al Jazeera as a global media brand. And now, of course, you have organizations such as the South China Morning Post, which have a worldwide footprint. And what we're actually seeing with the advent of the internet age, and most people consuming their news online or via television, is that non-Western narratives are getting greater primacy than they have in the past. And I think this has had an extremely salutary impact on the conflict and how the conflict is viewed. I'm talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict. And what we're seeing is, a lot of narratives which were really unable to be promoted, unable to be spoken maybe 1 or 2 or 3 decades ago, are now gaining primacy. And one of the things which I think has been fascinating for me to see in the media is in fact the sea change in the United States. Because let's be, honest here, let's be frank. When it comes to geopolitics and also when it comes to media, the United States is still the major player on the global stage. Okay, and certainly when it comes to the Israel-Palestine conflict, when we talk about the billions of aid, both military and non-military, which flows from the United States to Israel, obviously the position of the US body politic, and insofar as it impacts the US body politic, the position of the US media is of utmost importance. And what we're really seeing is a change. And I look back to my days as a student, a university student and a graduate student in the United States, which would be the 1980s and the 1990s. And honestly, it's kind of a night and day difference when you look at both the, when you look at the media narrative in America, you look at the conversations which are happening on university campuses in America, and you also look at the actual conversations which are happening in the halls of power in the United States, as well as in Europe and the UK. So, for instance, I would like to if we're talking about media, just in the past week, for instance, I've, seen several articles like, for instance, a couple of days ago, I think this came out on the, let me see now, would it be the 22nd of May, which would be 4 days ago. It was in the New York Times, and it was a very talked about piece, Life Under Occupation, the Misery at the Heart of the Conflict, which was written by 2 very senior New York Times reporters. And it is a very sympathetic portrayal of the misery which everyday Palestinians suffer under the Israeli occupation. And this is the kind of article which you simply wouldn't have seen in the New York Times a decade ago. Similarly, if I go to the Washington Post, I can see just today there is a perspective piece called Palestinian Citizens of Israel Like Me Are Facing Terrifying New Attacks. And it's written by Eva Najjar, who is, I presume, a Palestinian commentator. And again, this is the kind of voice which one simply wouldn't have seen in the US media a decade ago. I can also bring your attention to a recent piece by Rolling Stone magazine, which I found very interesting. Now, of course, you might think that Rolling Stone magazine is hardly the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal, but I think it's actually very interesting because it gives you a sense of what younger Americans are thinking and feeling in writing. And it's really a platform for more youthful engagement with the issues. And there's a marvelously interesting article which just came out, written by a young Jewish American woman called Marissa Kabas, where she says young American Jews have reached a tipping point with Israel. And the point she's trying to make is that there has been this sea change on university campuses with progressive politics have really become much more important and much more central to college campuses. And part of these progressive politics is, of course, a rethinking of the Israeli-Palestine issue. And you see, of course, in the United States Congress, you have the Squad, which is Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. You have, I think, who are the Ayanna Presley, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar. And I think there are 2 more, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, have joined them. And again, you're seeing people taking a very strong stand on Palestinian rights, which simply would have been political suicide, a few years ago. You have someone such as Bernie Sanders, who's the senator from Vermont, famed presidential candidate, and in fact, it's worth mentioning, is Jewish himself, who has been a very vocal advocate of Palestinian rights and a critic of the atrocities which have been committed by the Israeli army in Gaza and on the West Bank in this last in this last assault over the last couple of weeks. This is all very new. Okay, and I think the reason this has happened, as I said, there's a couple of reasons. One is that media is no longer dominated by those few voices. I think social media has had a huge impact. It's democratized the space of media, which has allowed more voices to come up. And of course, I think living in the age where we can, the visual impact of what is going on, where you can actually see the death and the destruction, you can hear the voices of Palestinian families, mothers, fathers, children who have seen their homes demolished, who have lost close family members. You see the fact that 64 children are among the dead in Gaza and the West Bank. These things really do have an impact. And I feel that public opinion worldwide is in fact moving. I think in this context, I always like to think of the great Martin Luther King Jr., who said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I think for many decades, our Palestinian brothers and sisters would have, felt as though the, it seems as though we have been in a sort of a hopeless situation, and the narrative has been moving against them. The settlements are expanding. It seems as though every day the hope for a just and fair solution, which takes into account the rights and the humanity of the Palestinian people, has been chipped away over the last decades. But I feel that with the change in the narrative, and especially the change in the media narrative over the past few years, that actually there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that, we are moving as a global community, and especially I see it among progressives in the United States, in the UK, in the Western world, towards a more equitable understanding of this conflict. I think the most influential journalist in this regard is an American Jewish. It's very interesting. He is an Orthodox Jewish American commentator, journalist, Peter Beinart, very respected. He's really, a superb journalist, a superb reporter, superb commentator. And, he's written some incredible pieces. I think his latest one is a Jewish case for the Palestinian refugee return, where he makes the case as a Jewish American. He makes the case as a supporter of Israel for why he thinks that, the current laws which are in place, which allow for a Jewish right of return, but do not allow for a Palestinian right of return, are unfair and inhuman, and in fact something which he cannot support. And of course, he's written earlier very persuasively and strongly debunking the myth that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitic. And so when you have voices such as his being raised, I think it really does change the narrative and give us all room for hope. I think in conclusion, because I am cognizant of the fact that there are many other people here who we need to listen to, who I would like to actually listen to and hear what they have to say. I'll just make a couple of final points, which I think touch on the issue of media and media narrative. I think it's important for us to understand that and not look at this as a Muslim versus Jewish conflict. Okay, because I think it's very important to understand that this is really a human rights conflict. What we're talking about is, on the one hand, an occupation army, and on the other hand, you have human beings. And this is a human rights issue. And of course, the majority of Palestinians are Muslim, of course, but you have Palestinian Christians as well. I think we should really be focusing on the humanity of Palestinians as opposed to their religion. And by the same token, of course, many Jewish voices, both inside and outside Israel, are now questioning a lot of Israeli policies. You have, like I said, even within Israel, you see that, and certainly outside of Israel, you have organizations like Jewish Voices for Peace. You have politicians such as Bernie Sanders, who I've mentioned. Of course, we all know of other people such as Norman Finkelstein, who have raised their voice on this issue. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, to sort of look at it through this prism. And of course, and by the same token, we have to understand that, you know, taking a position against Zionism, taking a position against the immiseration of the Palestinians under occupation is not an anti-Semitic position. And it's very important to separate out those two concepts. And I think that understanding is there. Now, you still see, again, among certain corners in the media in the US and the UK, it's hard if people try and raise their voice on this issue. People say, oh, well, you know, this is a problem. But I think now more and more you are seeing people understand in that mindset is going. So I think I'll just finish on that. My final position is, of course, while we raise our voice for our Palestinian brothers and sisters in what they are suffering under occupation, let us also not forget that there are other similar atrocities being committed elsewhere around the world. I think, for instance, of the tremendous suffering being meted out to the Yemeni population for the last several years. So while we, of course, focus on the atrocities in the occupied territories of our Palestinian brothers and sisters, let us not forget atrocities elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sowan, and thank you very much for giving some very insightful perspective of US media and the Western media, and talking about the voices within the Western media that we are seeing gradually coming day by day. And it's a very important point, not by mentioning that, not seeing this conflict only from the prism of religion, but also from this prism of human rights issues. Before I go to our next speaker, can I just request our technical people from NSU to give permission to some of the media people who wants to record this session. I hope our panelists would not mind, because some of the media people who are presenting here, they want to get it recorded, especially the TV media. Is it okay, sir, for all the panelists? Okay. So please, the not-so technical people, make sure that they get also permission for recording, the media people. Okay, now I'm going to His Excellency Ambassador Yusuf Ramadan, Ambassador of Embassy of State of Palestine, to give his speech. Hand it over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. I am really honored to be among all the intellectual elite of this society. And I feel the first two speakers, they spoke as they were the ambassador of Palestine. I appreciate that very much. And I'm sure the rest will also. This case is simple. It's not complicated. It's between good and evil. Palestinian people were uprooted forcibly from their home in 1948 and expedited to the periphery of Palestine. And since then, for 73 years, they're still living either under occupation or as a refugee in refugee camps, in misery, hard time, difficulties for them, for their children, and for their parents. The question is very important here: where is humanity? And the answer to that is not with me. The answer with that is with those people who claim to be the protector of humanity, the people who design. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we
yes,
can hear you, sir.
Am I
It's
here?
absolutely okay. Yeah.
So the answer is not with me. The answer is with those who claim to be the protector of human rights. And clearly, I wanted to say by names, as they say, call the spade a spade, the United States of America, the country who supposed to protect human rights and humanity wherever it is, despite religion or color or whatever. But unfortunately, what we have seen is totally different. We have seen injustice, we have seen unfair when it comes to the matter of the Palestinian and the Israeli. We have suffered and we try to take the law in our own hand. In 1965, we have launched our revolution and we start fighting, because as a human nature, when you are oppressed, you have to fight back. When you are under occupation, you need to fight the occupier. And that's how most of the country, they were under occupation. They had to do that, and they had to struggle, and they had to use armed force in order to regain their freedom. And I think the United Nations resolution have declared that the people under occupation has the right to defend themselves, and they have the right for the armed struggle. And that's, I think, in the Article 6. But again, when it comes to the Palestinian, this article is being erased by the American, that we, the Palestinian, have no right to defend ourselves or to try to liberate our country, while in the late 70s, early 80s, the Afghan Mujahideen had the right to fight the Soviet Union and drive the Russian out of Afghanistan, and so on. Many other countries are similar. So when the interest of the superpower, and I mean by the superpower USA, when the interest located in certain place, they change the rule, the law, the regulation, the understanding, everything for this interest. Now, how many lives that will cost, how the people will suffer as a result, it does not matter at all. That is very unfortunate for us, especially for the Palestinian people. We have decided to take the chance of establishing peace with Israel, as we have lived for the last 300 or 3,000 years, Arabs and Jews in Palestine, in peace and harmony. We thought it is possible that we could do that again. And we have accepted to sit with them and recognize Israel, and they recognize the PLO on the other side. And we have been 31 years negotiating with them with no result at all. It's not even with no result at all. It's, in fact, it's going backwards. For example, as our professor said, the expansion of settlements is one of the greatest obstacles for peace. Before we start negotiation in 1993, 3% of the West Bank were Jewish settlers living in 3% of the land. After the negotiate, 30 years after negotiating, they control, those settlements control over 40% of the land of the West Bank. So what kind of peace are we talking about? Two-state solution, we said fine, the international community wants two-state solution. It's fine, we'll accept two-state solution. Even though in the mid-70s, the PLO proposed one-state solution, that Arab, Muslims, Christian, and Jews can live together equally on a state of Palestine, or state, we will find another name for it. And they reject that. And of course, we can understand why would they reject that, because demography, and believe that if they want to be a democratic state, we are outnumbered, we are 15 million, they are 5 or 6 million. So obviously will be the people in power ruling the country. So they rejected that, fine with us. We have accepted 22% of the total land of Palestine, which is West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem. It represents only 22% of the historical Palestine, for many people who doesn't know that. And yet we have accepted that because the international community asked us to do that, demanded from us to do that, and we have accepted that. But yet the Israeli rejected. Even Donald Trump, when he came with the plan, who would give us less than 9% of our land, believe me, if we have accepted his plan, Israeli will also reject it. All the Israeli prime minister from the day independent took place, independent of Israel, or the creation of Israel took place, until Benjamin Netanyahu, none of those prime ministers really wanted to establish or to allow the establishment of the state of Palestine. The issue is related to religion. Let's not put our, as the hostages do, put our head in the sand. It is true. It is a religious issue. The Bible or the Torah says, their version of Torah, that this land was given to us or promised to us by God. He promised the land of the Palestinian to us. And by the way, Palestine and Palestinian was mentioned in Torah 287 times. It's not mentioned in the Bible, it's not mentioned in the Quran, it's mentioned in the Torah, the book, the holy book of the Jewish people. It is the Palestinian land, belong to the Palestinian, and so on. Now, the other version of the old version of the Torah, it doesn't say that. It says something else. Maybe it's a good news to know. Good news for you, for all the people who really seek justice. That old Torah says that Israel will exist one day for 76 years. But it will vanish after 76 years. And then the Jews will be spread all over the world. Now, according to their Bible, 76 years in the Jewish calendar means 74 years in our calendar. That's why yesterday or the day before yesterday, one of the Jewish rabbi, he was crying, weeping, and when they asked him why, he said, we still have one more year. According to our Bible, according to the Torah, we have one more year for the destruction of the state of Israel. Now, we don't want to go through that. We wanted to go into what the Palestinians have made and what they gave, and in return, what did they get? They gave everything possible. We accepted everything possible. We never ask for absolute justice. We asked for a possible justice. And even that, we are unable to get. And even that, the occupation is still lying on our head, in our chest. The occupation is killing us, destroying our home, confiscating more and more land, does not treat us as a human being. And yet, when we wanted to do anything in order to defend ourselves, we are a terrorist. And when they wanted to bomb us and destroy our houses, they call it self-defense. So where is justice? There is no justice. Once a President Jamal Abdel Nasser, the president of Egypt, I think you might all know him, he said one very important sentence. After 1976, he said, what's been taken by force, you can never get it back unless by using the same force. I believe that. I believe that armed struggle is the only solution for us. Of course, we as Palestinians comparing ourselves with Israel, there is no comparison because they have the most advanced weapon in the world given by the American. But with the help of our neighbors, with the help of the Muslim world, we are able to achieve that. Hezbollah in Lebanon, as you all know, were able to liberate his country after 18 years from being under occupation. One force only, 20,000 fighters. With the help of Syria, with the help of Iran, and with the help of others, they were able to liberate their country. I believe there will be no state solution. I am the ambassador of Palestine. My government adopt that. True. But I'm telling you, I'm talking to you from my heart what I believe and what the majority of the Palestinian people believe after 31 years of negotiation. There will be no two-state solution. It will always be one state. That is unfortunate, but that is how it's going to be. So for that, we are patient. We'll wait for that. We'll wait for it happens, the one-state solution. We don't mind to live with the Jews, believe me. We never minded before, and we will never mind in the future. But the Jews who will accept to live with us, not as superior to us, on equal footing, an equal citizen, in harmony. And we and them can prosper faster than they can imagine. We and them can become a symbol of peace, security, and stability in the Middle East. We are rich in culture, we are rich in human resources, we are rich in everything. The only thing we need is to accept each other. We accept them, they reject us. So what can we do? What is our choice? They left us with no choice but to fight back with everything that we have. The Palestinian people, believe me, they are all of them, always be ready to sacrifice whatever they have to protect their land, to protect their honor, to protect their dignity, and more important than all that, to protect the first Qibla of Islam. I hope God will give us the strength to continue to struggle until we achieve our goal. And our goal is the goal of humanity. It's not our goal alone, believe me. Unfortunately, Israeli, the way they have acted in front of everybody, in front of the cameras, doesn't care about the feeling of Islam, doesn't care about the feeling of humanity, prove what I'm saying is correct. I thank you again. I appreciate what you have said, appreciate what you're going to say, and I believe that people like you, seminars like this, webinar like this, will help the Palestinian, and the Palestinian will understand that they are not alone in their struggle. Thank you very much, and a very good morning to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Yusuf Ramadan. We are all touched by your very passionate speech. And I can take the main point that you raised, that the whole peace process in last 31 years did not produce, or this negotiation did not produce anything. And that data that you are showing, that the more the peace process continued, the more the Palestinians suffered, more the land they lost. So yeah, so that's a very terrible kind of a situation. And I do understand your feelings and this desperateness, and also among the people of the Palestine, that sometimes living in other parts of the world very peacefully, it is unimaginable for us to see and understand why small boys and girls, they are throwing stones in front of these tanks and these missiles. And where from do they get this courage? So that's the desperateness and frustration that they have been experiencing. But we are so happy to also know from you that the resistance within Palestinians is still intact, and they are ready to resist this unholy and this bad kind of the spirits there. So now I would like to request our Honorable Ambassador Shahidul Haq, the Senior Fellow of South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance, North-South University, so to make his speech on this role of United Nations and international community in resolving the crisis. Ambassador Shahidul Haq.
Thank you very much. All protocols observed. Our deep respect to Ambassador Yusuf Ramadan for his very heart-touching statement. So thank you for joining us. I have been asked to see what UN so far doing in terms of Israeli-Palestinian crisis, and also look at some of the other international organizations in 10 minutes, which is likely to be very difficult, but I'll try and go fast, and if there are questions, I'll be very happy to come back. Now, I thought of looking at three entities. One is the UN, the other one OIC, just to flag that OIC matters in these issues, and then ICC, which is a new kind of development that has taken in fact this year. So let's start with the UN. If you look at the history of the UN, it is actually Palestinian-Israeli conflicts history, same. In fact, before UN established, League of Nations, after the Ottoman defeated, give the mandate to the Britain or British in those days to administer, which is state of Palestine in those days. Now, British did it for quite some time actually, and then from 1922 to 1947, and then they could not bring any viable solution to the area that they were administered. Just want to flag, this is the only area where the administrating state could not bring a solution because of possibly their intentions. Because all other states were somehow or other their territory was settled and declared. I'm talking about the pre-World War II situations. So here comes the World War II, and then there's a huge Jewish community leaving Eastern Europe, and they decided to all go to Palestine because by then Balfour Declaration was in place. And there was also a system in place for encouraging them to go over. Now, failing to do anything, the British in fact dropped the ball and left without having any solution. So UN was forced to come in and terminated their mandate given to the United Kingdom. And then they said there'll be two states. One is the Palestine for the Palestinians, and the other is the Jewish state. Fine, and the Jerusalem will be international city. That's the beginning of the debate. So I think the Jewish community quickly established a state and became a member of United Nations in 1948, as opposed to the Palestinians. And there was a lot of politics played behind. I will not go into that. So UN was actually, I call it a venue of this problem in terms of creation of the problem, and also in terms of a big player till 1948. And then when the war broke out, 1948 war that I'm referring to, UN was pushed out, sidelined by the big four major powers who decided that the whole issue would be controlled by them, not by the UN. So that's how the whole occupied land created, which Israel thinks it's a disputed land, and we think it's a Palestinian territory. We means most of the developing countries, including China. So this is what is the UN. Now, in the process, what UN did when they were sidelined in the whole political process, they were given the responsibility to look at the refugees who left Israel and went over all over the world. And but by then UNHCR was up and running, but because of those four major powers, UNHCR was not given the mandate to deal with these refugees like other refugees. So a new organization was created called UNRWA, which is still in function, thanks to UNRWA because of their mandate and their strong, committed group of people. A lot of lives have been saved so far. I'm talking about the humanitarian side now. One more thing has happened, and we need to know that in 1948, peacekeeping forces were also employed in the area, but they were in the border between Egypt and West Bank and Gaza, but the peacekeepers were all in the Egyptian territory because the Israelis did not accept that. So see, the whole thing, Israeli kind of a detest for any multilateral intervention had the roots quite early. But one important fact that we often do not recall is that in 1948, when they applied for a UN membership, Israel, they were duty-bound to abide and implement all these resolutions that were adopted, including the resolution 191, which suggested that the Palestinians will go back to their land, the reparation will be given. So they accepted that, but those were eventually not implemented. So beginning was good, but implementation was extremely poor. As I said, that it's a pretty long history and a twisted history. I'll quickly run through it. So this is the UN role. And I just want to flag that UNRWA is currently in action in the Gaza and West Bank. And there are 26 UN agencies currently stationed there physically, trying to help the Palestinian people. So UN, within its limits, trying to do whatever is possible. Now, comes to the Security Council. The Security Council has also been very active till the P4, not 5. P4 taken over the whole control of the crisis and marginalized UN. I think, without going back into the history too much, I think 2016, the UN Security Council resolution, which is 2334, has been a very major breakthrough. If that were to implement it, it was never implemented, where the whole settlement issue came in. And they said, you know, you just cannot go and occupy a country and say that this is my home and house. As simple as that. But somehow or other, the President Obama was in power and they did not veto this. So that's also a landmark on which the UN always said, there's an international conference taking all the resolutions, all parties, including Palestinians, and have a peace process. So that's there. If there are questions, I'll be very happy to answer. I think I need to also mention that as early as 1974, President Yasser Arafat wanted or made an appeal to the UN to give them an observership in the UN. It was adopted through UNGA resolution 105 in favor, but somehow it did not implement it because Security Council P4 did not allow, which actually again materialized in 2012. Now, the Palestinian Authority, PA, is currently sitting as a non-member observer in the UN. That's also, I think, a big achievement. So there are some bit of an achievement on the UN, but not too many, because it has never been in the driving seat of any of the negotiating process. Whenever there was a negotiations, UN was asked to not get involved, and we know why it is so, including the latest one, which is Egypt and Qatar, implemented not by the UN. UN was kept out. I'll not go into anything else, so I'll come quickly to the. I think Secretary General Guterres has been very vocal and very critical about the recent incident, including the occupations, and calling for, again, an international conference, which is highly unlikely to happen as long as the P4 countries do not agree and see this. So if there are questions, I'll be very happy to come back. I think I have said the thing I need to say. In terms of OIC, the whole OIC was established because of Al-Quds and Al-Sharif, because of the Palestinian issue. So that's the very rationale. But, you know, sorry to say, we see within OIC, there are also hesitations by some of the countries, because some of them have normalized the relationship, quote unquote, with the Egypt, with the Israel, making OIC a little less kind of powerful as opposed to things that we have seen in the past. But hope that soon they will overcome and realize that appeasement has never worked. It will not work in this case also. As simple as that. On the issue of ICC, I'll close in 2 minutes. One good thing has happened, that ICC in March this year has initiated what you call formal investigations into the alleged war crimes in the Palestinian territory. First time, because Palestinians had joined ICC 2015, if I'm not wrong. So after doing a 5 years painstaking, what they call preliminary examinations, they have found out that there have been war crimes committed in the Palestinian by the Israeli military. So formal investigation has to be started. They have started doing it. It is a slow process, but it is late, but at least it has started. I think there's also one area, although it's not UN per se, but international community could really build on it. Because I think it is very critical. The time has come when we should sort of find out what kind of a war crime or atrocity. We have used the doctrine atrocity rather than atrocities in the sense of word in the title could be done. I'm extremely happy and delighted to hear Professor Sobhan about the changing nature, and also Dr. Rab. I think we'll have a very good discussions. I think three things happening which will change future. One is that that there are voice of humanity is coming out from the very home of those who have been trying to protect Israel. And I'm very happy that Mr. Sobhan has said that it's not anti-Semitism, but it's a Zionism that we should need to look at often we mix it. The other one is the whole issue of youth, the Generation Z, both in the Palestinian occupied land and in Israel, who sees that what kind of a stigma they have been given just because they were into a atrocity. I think that generation might think of sitting down and changing rather than the old generation which still have a baggage. The third area where I think during this conflict came out very strongly, I think Israel has lost in cultural war for the first time I see, because there are narratives coming out linking this racist policy with the bigger global racist, the whole Me Too issues. So that's where it is building up. And the younger Palestinians are, I think, finding a new way of waging a war against Israel rather than going into a hard war that they are unlikely to win. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Shoidul Haq, for the in-depth analysis of the role of international organizations, and especially UN and other organizations like OIC and ICC. We do understand that this debate and discussions are going on for some long time, that whether the international setup of organizations, they are failing to address the conflict issues because of geopolitics. And we are seeing not only in the case of Palestine, we are seeing it, the international agencies, they are miserably failing in case of interfering and intervening in the Yemen crisis, or even in case of the Rohingya crisis. We have seen by Bangladeshi sitting it here, we do understand that how miserably the international organizations, especially UN, fail to really address this whole issue of genocide by the Myanmar generals and others, even though some achievements have been done by the International Court of Justice. But as a Bangladeshi academicians, we do understand that what the expectation we had, that has not been met. And there is no probability also in the near future. So that's happening also in case of this Palestinian conflict. And that is probably the best case scenario to analyze as a case analysis for international students, international relations students, to see the future role of international organizations like UN. And that's why we are seeing there's lots of these alternatives, public opinion creations has been happening, and people are now raising these voices within West and outside West. The people's voices are now more raised about these international setups. I was just thinking, as one of my students once asked me this question, I am tempted to share it with you before going to our main speaker here. He said that if anything could be happened by Russians or Chinese in their neighboring country, like Israel, and occupying some land. We have seen what happened in Ukraine and how the whole Western media and also the international organizations, they jumped on to take actions. If something happened by the Syrians to their nationals and chemical attack or something, how the international organizations reacted immediately, sending troops, taking severe actions. And now if you compare this Israel-Palestine, this is almost like that humanitarianism, this humanitarian issues has been subsided by because of geopolitics. This is the ugly truth. This is the elephant in the room. But that's true that now nobody cares about in the international setup. Even, yes, I'm not complaining that the UN Secretary General, he has good intention, but he doesn't have power to interfere because this whole geopolitical game plan is now dictating the global political economic scenario. So that's very unfortunate, and that's happening anyway. So I'm sorry that as a moderator, I also took some time. Now I go to our Honorable Ambassador Masood bin Momen, Foreign Secretary, People's Republic of Bangladesh, to give his speech on Bangladesh's unwavering support and solidarity with Palestinians. So, sir, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tawfiq, for moderating this session. Professor Atikul Islam, Vice Chancellor, North-South University and Chair of today's webinar. His Excellency Yusuf S.Y. Ramadan, Ambassador of the State of Palestine, with whom we spent 1 hour earlier in the day, where he received or we arranged a session. Some of our pharmaceutical companies are coming forward to donate important medicine for the Palestinian people and also the affected people in Gaza. Dr. Rob, thank you very much for your presentation, setting the tone of our webinar. And Ambassador Shahidul Haq, former Foreign Secretary, who has been working behind the scene to make this program a success. Distinguished guests from home and abroad, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to thank the Center for Peace Studies of South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance of the North-South University for organizing this very timely webinar on the Israeli atrocities against the Palestinian people. The most unfortunate and continual plight of the Palestinians is one of the longest lingering issues of the world. During the holy month of Ramadan, we sadly witnessed another appalling episode of atrocities and human rights violations against innocent civilian Palestinians, including children. And these indiscriminate attacks on the innocent civilians were done in the pretext of fight against terrorism, quote unquote. And that raised this compelling question of our webinar, that is, where is humanity? Ambassador Shahidul Haq already mentioned about some of the efforts of the UN, and I'd just like to compliment that in an effort to immediately find a solution to the crisis, the president of the UNGA, who is currently visiting Bangladesh. In fact, right now he's in Cox's Bazar visiting the camps for the Rohingyas, convened a special session of the UNGA on 20th of May. And the session strongly condemned the Israeli violence and called for immediate ceasefire. And we can say that as one of the outcome of this collective action by member states, a ceasefire did come into effect on the very day. And the meeting also resulted in the adoption of a ministerial statement and PGA's appeal for peace. Before that, of course, the UN Security Council has also convened a number of meetings and currently seized of this matter. Although the ceasefire is a welcome development, but it is not enough and could be a prelude for more violence in the future, as we have seen from the trends in the past. It is clear that the cycle of impunity has only emboldened the occupying forces and encouraged them to commit repeated violations of human rights. The international community must hit the nail on the head and work towards a permanent solution to this crisis. At the same time, decisive actions must be taken towards ensuring accountability and justice for all violations of human rights and humanitarian laws. The recent decision of the Human Rights Council to hold a special session on this issue is an encouraging initiative. The upcoming meeting to be held tomorrow in Geneva is expected not to be confined to iteration or reiteration of usual rhetoric in support of the Palestinians. Rather, the Council is expected to adopt a resolution eyeing for an independent international commission of inquiry to investigate all recent violations and abuses of international humanitarian law and international human rights law. And our delegation in Geneva is right now engaged in this important endeavor. Bangladesh's position, yes, our position on Palestine is clear and unambiguous. Our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, in his maiden speech at the UNGA set the premise of Bangladesh's position vis-a-vis the inalienable rights of the Palestinians in 1974. And I quote, injustice is still rampant in many parts of the world. Our Arab brothers are still fighting for the complete eviction of the invaders from their land. The equitable national rights of the Palestinian people have not yet been achieved. In spite of the acceleration of the process of abolishing colonialism, it hasn't reached its ultimate goal, unquote. In his statements in OIC in 1974 and NAM in 1973, he expressed Bangladesh's unflinching support for the legitimate rights and just struggle of the Palestinian brethren. As standing by the oppressed people all over the world is a foreign policy priority of Bangladesh. In this continuity during the most recent crisis, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, in her letter to President Mahmoud Abbas, which I handed over personally to the Palestinian ambassador in my office, strongly denounced such abhorrent acts of terror and reaffirmed Bangladesh's unflinching commitment in realizing the inalienable rights of the brotherly people of Palestine for an independent homeland based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Subsequently, Bangladesh always supports Palestine and its territorial integrity as established through the UN Security Council Resolution 242 and also other resolutions as was elaborated by Ambassador Shahidul Haq. The Security Council, the UNGA, the Human Rights Council and the International Court of Justice have all confirmed that the construction and expansion of Israeli settlements and other settlement-related activities in the occupied Palestinian territories are illegal under international law. Bangladesh also welcomed International Criminal Court's decision to open an investigation into Israel's crimes against the Palestinian people. Bangladesh has also been very much active within the platform of NAM and the OIC for the cause of the people of the state of Palestine. In fact, Bangladesh's own struggle for independence and the horrific experience of the worst form of genocide in 1971 always inspires the people of Bangladesh to advocate against the Israeli aggression. Justice delayed is justice denied. A parallel can be drawn to the case of recent alleged genocidal acts against the Rohingyas of Rakhine and their continued plight and a not so encouraging role of the international community. Distinguished guests, to reach a durable, peaceful, and just solution of the Palestinian crisis in accordance with the relevant UN resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative and the Quad Trade Roadmap, the international community needs to emphasize on the following. First, Israel should immediately stop its illegal occupation and annexation of the Palestinian territory, including all settlement-related work. As a member of OIC core group on Palestine, Bangladesh played active and vocal role in convening the recent meetings at the OIC and the UN on the Palestine issue, and we will continue our efforts in these and other fora. Second, we have seen the rise of populism and the consequent reappearance of racial discrimination in political rhetorics and narratives around the world in the last decade after the global financial crisis, thanks to the rising power of social media. Although Mr. Subhan mentioned that there is a democratizing effect, but the ideals of humanity are also diminished, and we have seen a reversal of liberal thoughts around the world. We have seen, for example, inoculation of most of the Israeli citizens against COVID-19 pandemic, whereas the Palestinians in the occupied territories are left out. Let's suppress the politics behind the conflict, the projection of rockets from Gaza by Hamas and the right of Israel for existence in its defense, could it be termed as apartheid in the 21st century? And this kind of state policy using disproportionate use of force, resulting in deaths of innumerable citizens, did not create as much attention in any form in the mainstream media as we see in the aftermath of the ground or military strikes. These points were elaborated in Mr. Soban's presentation, of course. Third, the Security Council and the General Assembly must fulfill their charter obligations. There should be meaningful initiatives to enforce compliance by Israel of all international human rights and humanitarian laws and relevant UN resolutions, including the resolution 2334 of 2016, and ensure justice for the Palestinian people. Fourth, an international independent investigation must be commissioned as envisaged by Human Rights Council, and appropriate legal actions must be taken against the Israeli authorities for crimes and atrocities perpetrated on the Palestinian people. Finally, of course, the immediate establishment of the State of Palestine on the basis of the two-state solution with East Jerusalem as its capital, as envisaged in the relevant UN resolutions, should remain at the core of our collective efforts. Before concluding, I'd also like to take this opportunity to share with you our position concerning a recent tweet of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel welcoming removal of ban on travel to Israel on e-passports being issued recently by Bangladesh. The confusion appears to have emanated from the new booklets of the e-passports, which does not contain the observation, quote, all countries excepting Israel, unquote. The removal of the observation has been done to maintain international standards of Bangladeshi e-passports and does not imply in any way any change of Bangladesh's foreign policy towards Israel and also in the Middle East. The ban on travel of Bangladeshi passport holders to Israel remains unchanged. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ambassador Masood bin Momen. And we're glad that you have addressed at your last part of the speech this passport issue, because lots of questions already I can see in the chat box, and you have clearly stated that. So I hope it will clear the confusion. If any other comments come, I will come back. So let me, we are seeing lots of questions in the chat box, and I will go one by one. So there are some specific, Dr. Sakwad, you wanted to say something? Okay. Okay, sir, very quickly, if you can just...
thank you very much. Very quickly, I would. And
yeah.
I would just address in one word, the Excellencies, the Vice Chancellor, and the gentleman. Thank you very much for organizing such a very important topic on it. Important topic. I will just flag few points. There's no time for elaborating all this. I've been looking at Arab-Israeli war right from 1965 onward, and trying to study as much as possible. I have few points that I could raise, and if somebody wants to elaborate, one can. It's very much, if not 100%, but it's very much a religious fight. There is no doubt about it, because to me, it's a continuation of the crusade, which started 1100 years ago. The manifestation is very clear when Field Marshal Allenby landed in Jerusalem and straight away went to Damascus in the central mosque, and where Saladin the Great was lying, and he put his feet on the grave and said, "Rise, Saladin, here is the Frank over the Christian." However, that's one point, and it continues and it will continue. Second is that nobody is an honest broker. Nobody has been an honest broker in bringing peace. Not the Arab countries, not the United States, not anybody else. If not going to the history, the Palestinian cause have been betrayed by its neighbors in 1948, where the aggression or the advance stopped in East Jerusalem. And there were two parleys with the late King Abdullah and Golda Meir. It was very explicitly written in Golda Meir's book, and they drew a line. That was a time when the entire the Palestine could have been liberated, and it was remain under occupation of Jordan. That was also a time to go for a two-state on the resolution which was passed by United Nations. However, now the point is that as far as Bangladesh is concerned, I would say that the people in Bangladesh has all the support for the Palestinian brothers, right? From the day one, Masood bin Kamal has already talked about the father of the nation, but I would just very quickly give that instances. In 1967 war, 3 Israeli planes were shot down by one pilot. His name was Saiful Azam. He was a Bangladeshi. It was the history in the warfare between Arabs and the Israelis. No one else till today could shoot down 3 Israeli aircraft superior than what it was with the Jordan and Iraq. And it goes in the history of Israeli air warfare. And then, if Excellency could remember the 1982, the massacre in Sabra and Satila and the fight between PLO and the Israelis, there were few Bangladeshis who participated. So the point what I'm trying to make is that Bangladeshis wholeheartedly wants that there should be a peace and a Palestinian state should come out. Now, regards to already Masood bin Kamal has already said about the passport, but I would just put one question to him. Some of the e-passport has the travel restriction ban is still there, including mine, which says except Israel. But then, is it the latest, which has come from maybe many other considerations? But there should not be any misunderstanding. At least I can assure you that but most of the people that of our community and the people of Bangladesh is with the Palestinians, and we want the two-state solution, and the justice is done, and at the end of this so-called quote unquote crusade. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sakwat. We will read some of the written questions to the panelists, and then we will see that whether we have enough time to get other comments. So one of the written question, just let me read out to Mr. Jafar Soban, that from Dr. Abdul Wahab. He said that, as you have mentioned, that the current media outlets in the West have allowed to publish news on rights of Palestine. However, do you think that the agency of the media is still in the hand of some powerful personnel who certainly playing imbalanced role on the issues of the global media stage? So, Mr. Soban, do you want to address this now?
Sure. I mean, I think, of course, there's a lot of work to be done. It's still not, of course, we understand what a tremendously unlevel playing field it is, technologically, militarily. But of course, in terms of the media narrative, it's been a very unlevel playing field. But I like to focus on what I think is the evolution of this position, which I think is a glimmer of hope for all of us, and certainly a glimmer of hope for the Palestinians, because of course, in many ways, things have deteriorated markedly over the last few decades. I think His Excellency, Mr. Ramadan has mentioned, and other speakers have mentioned, the proliferation of settlements. For instance, every year the situation gets worse. It went from 3%, now we're talking to 40% of the land. So, if you look at the position on the ground, it's very depressing, discouraging, and dispiriting. So I do like to think, though, that in terms of the media, because we are now moving into a more democratic phase of media, which has been moved forward by social media and non-Western voices coming to the fore, and even now actually seeing Western voices taking a new look, a different look at this issue and other issues, that positive change, is ongoing. Certainly, there's a lot of room for improvement. Certainly, we're far away from getting to a level playing field when it comes to media narrative, but I do think things are improving.
Yeah, probably if I add something with you, even though I'm not a media analyst, so probably the another reason is that the social media is getting more popular for the young boys and girls as a source of news, not the conventional medias anymore. And that's not only in Bangladesh, I think that's happening globally. that the young boys and girls, they take their sources of news and analysis mostly from social media. The conventional media, whether print or electronic, they are many of the cases losing the audience, especially to the young generation. So I'm sure that the Western media are also feeling a pressure because, and now these alternative medias like, as you said, the Chinese media, Russian TV, RT, and the others are also in the game. So it is no more like 1980s and 70s. There is one specific question
Tawfiq, can I just add?
Yeah, please. I'm sure.
Just to add, since still we are on the media thing, no, I'm sure that some of you are closely monitoring how the media is becoming democratic on this issue, and I'm glad that Mr. Sobhan has raised it. Lately, we see also the very conservative magazines like Foreign Affairs and Foreign Policy, which has been towing the line of Israelis for quite some time, has recently allowed other voices to appear very strongly. And some bit of is an effort to bring a balance. And as you know, that some of these journal actually influences on the foreign policy making in the United States and other places. So this is also a new trend that we need to closely monitor and literally use this in the interest of the Palestinian. Just wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have next question to Ambassador Yusuf Ramadan. So this question is from Muhammad Shoaib. I'm just reading it from here, that he said that it is already proven 70 years of peace process that the US and Israel are not at all sincere to resolve the conflict and falsely keeping alive and the hope of two-state solution just to grab more and more Palestinian lands, as well as to kill and displace more and more Palestinian people until no one left to kill. Given this fact, would China and Russia, along with YC, be better mediators? Would Israel and USA accept it? If not, what can be done next? Can be done to avoid the future land grab and destruction and killing? Ambassador Yusuf Ramadan.
Thank you for the question. I think it is the time when the history has proven that the United States of America will not allow anyone to interfere in this business because they believe it's labeled for them. Israel is the naughty baby for the United States of America. The creation of Israel was the work of the Western world, mainly the United Kingdom, and later on the American took over. And they adopted Israel. And Israel is the baby of the American. Now, how would they allow the Chinese or the Russian or anyone else to come in the middle and ask for something which give the Palestinian the right? If that right will anger the Israeli, then it will not happen. So anything Israel will always say, America will adopt. The United States of America will adopt. The Chinese, from the beginning, and the Soviet Union before and Russia later on, they insisted that the Palestinians should have an independent state on the land occupied in 1967. But Israel never accepted that. Even some Israeli prime minister before, they said, yes, okay, but Jerusalem is an issue and so on, so on, so on. There was always a problem about it, simply because they don't want a Palestinian state. They don't support a Palestinian state. That is a fact. Let me give you an example. Why Israel gave the land back to Egypt in 1979? Simply because Egypt was the most powerful Arab country, the biggest Arab country in the region, and they were willing to give back Sinai Desert to the Egyptian for one reason, that Egypt will sign a peace treaty with Israel. So in another way, Egypt we consider the mother of the Arab world. So they have separated the mother from the children. And since then, we are suffering. Camp David was the first suffering for us as a Palestinian. And that is true. Because we suppose to want into this peace process together as one state, as one problem. Egyptian, the Syrian, the Jordanian, the Lebanese, and the Palestinian. At that moment only, we will be able to get our part of our land back and establish our own independent state. So we were supposed to go unitedly as one nation to the peace process, but they didn't want that. So they made it individually. And number one, they cut Egypt, the most powerful one, and then they were able to do it with the Jordan, right? And with Syria, it stopped. And then it's left the Palestinian. The Palestinian have no power behind them. And tell me, why would the, I mean, the Chinese, they're willing, and the Russian, they're willing. But the question is, they're not our neighbors. They're not from our religion. They're not from our region. There is nothing in common. I mean, we don't ask the Arabs to do something. And the Arabs are capable and able to do it if they want to do it. If they really want to do it. So unfortunately, let me tell you something to the man who asked the question. The only solution for the Palestinians, remember, through a war, not through peace. Israel has proven that because Israel is the only country in the world which act with impunity and with full support of the United States of America. International community, United Nations, they have very, very limited power. The power is for the American. And as long as the power is for the American, we don't have much choices, unfortunately. I'm not trying to make a, dark the picture, but I have to, we need to talk about hope. We are always hopeful, always hopeful. We live with hope, we live with optimism, but we cannot continue to lie to ourselves because what we see on the ground is nothing but a massacre. What we see is a Holocaust. It was 11 days, it was 11 days Holocaust. It was hell. Gaza was hell. The Palestinian territory was in hell. So we should stop this kind of, just trying to praise and try to make people happy and give them hopes and so on, so on, so on. Yes, hope we should have. We should have. We're optimistic. We have hope, but the picture is not as white as some people think, or at least some people think. It is dark. It is very dark. And what makes it more darker is the Arab situation today, the ununity. We have a problem in Syria, 10 years already, almost destroyed 65% of Syria. We had a problem in Iraq, still Iraq are suffering till today. Libya are suffering. Yemen, with the Gulf, some Gulf states, this is the situation of the Arab world. So what do you expect from the Palestinians to do with our big brothers behind us who are supposed to help us and to protect us? They are busy killing each other. That's a fact. And fact we should tell facts only. I'm sorry about my English. Maybe it's not good enough for you as intellectual people, but since it's not my first language, so maybe I mix up with things. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Ambassador Yusuf Ramadan. Very touchy and also, again, a very strong statement, but probably more pragmatic in this case that the solution you are saying. Probably sitting in Bangladesh, we do understand this context because we faced the same problem in 1971 when we tried negotiation with our Pakistani rulers, and then we tried and we failed, and then the resistance came. And through the resistance, the independence came. So sometimes, as you said, that sounds a little bit very strong, but that's only probably the solution. Sometimes for peace, you need a just war or something like that. And that's we are seeing. We have another question. I don't know who would like to answer from the panelists. Regarding this crack within the Arab nations, that the question came that we are seeing some of the Arab states now recognizing Israel and creating relationship. The Egypt and the Turkey were predecessors, but now we are seeing some others, and especially the Saudi Arabia started making relationships behind the curtain probably. So this question came that whether this not recognizing Israel as a legitimate state was once a weapon, because the Palestinians, they did not have a real weapon, but this non-recognition was a weapon. So are the Arabs losing that weapon against Israel by recognizing it as a legitimate state? I don't know who wants to answer it. Ambassador Shohidullah?
Can we hear Ambassador Youssef?
Okay, yeah.
Because he's
Ambassador Yusuf.
probably following very closely the Arab
Yeah.
I have an opinion of that.
I thought when you left the foreign ministry, you stopped being a diplomat, but it seems to me you're upgrading. You're upgrading that. You know, I wanted to answer that, but because I visit Arab countries, so if they forbid me from going there, then I think I will request for citizenship in Bangladesh. So I will answer that. So the question was why the Arab world are split, right? What else was it?
Yeah, so the question was that this recognizing by some of the Arab states that Israel as a state and
Recognizing.
promoting relationship, is it not seriously hurting the whole cause of this Palestinian issues?
This thing itself emboldening the Israeli to continue to act aggression, commit crimes, atrocity against the Palestinian people. Simply, it's like that. When you know, when the issue of passport came, sorry to come back to this, the e-passport came, I was clear and I was saying that Bangladesh is a sovereign state, has the full right to do whatever it sees fit. But at the same time, we wanted to say something about this issue. This was number one symbolic Bangladesh solidarity with the people of Palestine, sealed on your passport. Sealed on your passport. And we have considered that a weapon in our hand to struggle. It is a weapon. It is really a weapon for us. You and there is another 13 or 16 countries who have the same thing with the E. We were just not happy because this weapon was taken away from our hand while we were in the middle of the battle. The timing was not right. That's what I wanted to clear this issue. The timing was not right at all. Anyway, we come back to the Arabs. Yeah, unfortunately, the unity of Arab nation. We are 400 million people, for your knowledge. The Arab are 400 million people. Our land is 14 million square kilometers. We are second after Russia. And we are third after India in population. And we have unlimited mineral resources. We speak the same language. We read from the same book. We have everything, not a lot of things, almost everything in commons. But one thing we don't have, the unity, which is supposed to give us strength. And since we, of course, let me be also clear, when Israel was established in the Middle East, one of the main reasons for establishing in Palestine, which is the heart of the Arab world, is to keep the Arab nation divided. And that goes parallel with what our colleague, the professor, was saying about the Crusaders' War and later on our cousin, the Jewish.
Ambassador Yusuf.
The bad news is we are doing nothing to stop that. We're helping them. We're helping them that if they land against us for 5 years, what we are doing is, because we're doing nothing, This plan is being executed in 2 years, and they reach their goal very fast, very quickly, because we're doing nothing at all. I'm so saddened to see an Arab planes bombing other Arab citizens. It's very sad to see that. It's more saddening than establishing diplomatic relations with Israel. I'm at the same time equally sad to see shells coming from one Arab country to another Arab country. This is also very sad. I think we should have some Arab, I don't know, leaders to speak to ask these questions. I don't think they have answers. I don't think they'll have an answer. But it's very sad to know that. It's very sad to live. I don't know our children, what will they say in the future about us when they read that in the history, that there was sometimes between the 19th, 20th, and 21st century, that's how our grandfather and so lived. I think they'll feel ashamed of us, really, as an Arab. They will really feel ashamed. They will not believe that 5 million Jews came and occupied a land in Palestine called Palestine, and they were surrounded by 400 million Arabs, and they were not able to do anything. Do you think they will believe it? I mean, what will they say about us?
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador, for the response. Mr. Shahidullah, do you want to add anything, or any other panelists?
No, I think Ambassador Yusuf has been very revealing, at the same time very balanced and correct. I think the division within the Arab world started off with the Egypt, if I may allow to say, and which he has also said, and it is now spiraling out, and hope it doesn't further expand. So that's where we should be focusing on. No more rapprochement, no more appeasement. That's what I said. Appeasement will never work. You cannot save humanity through appeasement. And we have seen that. It didn't work with Hitler. It didn't work with Napoleon. It didn't work with Pakistanis. So how would we expect this to happen with the Israelis? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we are almost at the end. If any other panelists want to add anything, Ambassador Masood bin Momen, you want to?
I can speak, about my experience in New York. On a number of occasions, my Palestinian counterpart who was approaching within the OIC regarding some serious issues on Palestine, and there were voting issues also. And Bangladesh was the chair of the OIC, because we hosted the OIC ministerial conference, and therefore, as OIC chair, it was our responsibility to mobilize support for these votings at the General Assembly. But we have seen there also, I mean, I respect the sovereign decision of sovereign countries. But even on Palestinian issue, as Ambassador Shahidul Haq mentioned, that the raison d'etre of establishment of OIC was the Palestinian issue. But on that issue, we saw some members abstaining, some members being absent deliberately, and some members even voting, against the Palestinian cause. And at times there were some African countries, members of the OIC, who took these serious positions. It's unfortunate, to say the least, and some of these countries did the same thing when the resolution on the Rohingya situation was tabled in the General Assembly. But Rohingya situation may be new. Maybe it's not a core issue in the OIC, but on Palestinian issue, when we saw this kind of trend, very disturbing indeed. But again, these are decisions of sovereign countries. So as the Foreign Secretary, I cannot comment, but I think the sentiments in the House already been explained, and expressed. Thank you very much.
Dr. Tawfiq, can I just add here? It will be
Yeah, please.
it will be very interesting to see how the Arab countries take a position vis-a-vis the ICC move. ICC has, after 5 years of examination, has taken this decision to go ahead, like the Rohingya issue. It was easier for the Rohingya issue than the Palestinian issue. And it will be very interesting to see how the Arab countries opposes it or supports it, because that's the other opportunities opening up to address the fundamental question of humanity. So we'll see that. How it goes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I take
Thank
the
you.
floor?
Yeah, Professor Abdul Rab Khan. Yeah, very quickly, please.
I'm just apprehending that there might be a abandoning of more and more countries establishing relations with Israel. I remember when Egypt signed a peace treaty with Israel, there was a kind of boycotting of Egypt in the OIC framework. So I would just revise that critique of OIC. The OIC cannot just single out the countries, Arab Gulf countries, where relations are established, and they're not saying anything. I think at least we should stop the deluge from coming more. More and more countries might, in fact, that's my apprehension, establishing relations this way or that way, silently or openly with Israel. That is what might take place. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Professor Abdul Rab Khan. We had some more other questions, but I'm sorry, because of the shortage of time, we cannot address those. There was questions related with BDS movement and the Palestine Life Matters, and there are, I do understand, young participants who wanted to also say something openly, but I'm sorry, we would
Can I
consider
have
these
10
questions
seconds?
who is it? Yeah, please, Ambassador.
Yeah, I just have 10 seconds because
Please.
I wanted to just to make sure that people understand the relation between Palestine and Bangladesh is so solid that it is difficult to break. This is for everybody to understand. And that is, of course, we appreciate highly, starting from Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman position in the early 70s when he rejected the Israeli recognizing Bangladesh.
Sir,
and
sir,
all the
sir.
yes.
Sir,
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please continue. Yeah, please continue, sir.
And then it continued until today. And then the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, she took the same position as her father did. So I have to be grateful to those people who supported my country while they are 4,000 miles away from me. And I also wanted to pay tribute to the people of Bangladesh, to the citizen of Bangladesh, the citizen, either they're, I mean, if they're intellectual or normal or literate or illiterate, whatever, all kinds of people, all sorts of people in this society, I felt that they have a very special feeling for the Palestinian people. And that's what gives us a Palestinian hope, that we have people far away from us, but they think about us, they pray for us, they're willing to support us. And I wanted to just confirm what the professor was saying. There was 500 Bangladeshi fought for Palestinian cause. 47 out of that died in the battlefield to protect the Palestinian. And that is something also I feel an honor to be the ambassador of Palestine in Bangladesh. And that honor will always be with me. I'm very grateful to you. I'm grateful to Bangladesh, to the people, to the government, to everybody hold the citizen of Bangladesh, to everybody hold the passport of Bangladesh, whether it says with or without Israel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Yusuf Ramadan. We are mentioning that, and Bangladeshi people, Bangladeshi governments, all the governments felt like that we are closest friends, and we're ready to support all the time to the Palestinian authority and also the people. Before I go to our concluding speaker, the chair of the session, Professor Atikul Islam, I just have a small announcement. The Center for Peace Studies of South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance is organizing another webinar on 1st of July And this webinar will be on the issue of justice and accountability for the Rohingyas. And this will be organized jointly by University of Utrecht of Netherlands and North-South University. So I formally invite you all, and we will send you the links and all other invitations. So I would now like to request
Tawfiq, I'm sorry to interrupt. Tawfiq, it will be 1st June.
Yes, please. Sorry, Dr. Joshi.
1st June 2021.
Oh, sorry, 1st June. I'm sorry, said 1st June. Yeah, 1st June. Sorry. Yeah. So I invite now our chair of the session and the Vice Chancellor of North-South University, Professor Atikul Islam, for his speech. Sir, hand it over. If you just please unmute yourself, sir.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone.
Walaikum salam.
Ambassador Masood bin Momen, Honorable Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh, His Excellency Yusuf Ramadan, Ambassador of Palestine to Bangladesh, Mr. Shahidul Haq, ex-Foreign Secretary, and the Senior Fellow of our SIPG, who has been contributing tremendously to our efforts in some areas. Mr. Jafar Subhan, nice to see you. I read the Dhaka Tribune almost regularly. Professor Abdul Raub, Dean of School of Humanities and Social Sciences, NSU. Sheikh Tawfiq, Director, SIPG. Other participants, our students and staff who has joined us through Facebook and other medium. We have heard from the experts, from the representative of the victims of Palestine, Honorable Ambassador. We've heard from diplomats. We've heard from security analysts. I have learned quite a lot from this particular webinar. Let me not focus on the issue much. I'll basically thank you all. Let me make some points. A university is the place for free exchange of ideas. University is the place where ideas and issues will be debated, discussed, analyzed without any fear or favor. A university has a responsibility to facilitate lively debates on major world developments. When I was a university student, at the time Vietnam War was going, and I remember how active we were in Bangladesh and when I moved overseas on those kind of issues. Universities are conscious of the world. So North-South University has a responsibility to facilitate issues, to facilitate opinions and expressions on issues of world importance. We do that on a regular basis, whether you look at Rohingya issues, whether you look at other issues confronting the United Nations, other major problems in the world, or we talk about the climate issues, we do. And it is only befitting that North-South University will have a discussion or a seminar or webinar, whatever you call it, on the Palestinian issue. The Palestinian issue is an emotional issue to us in some way. As you read the history, not just as a Muslim, but as a person with any sense of justice, as a person with any sense of equity, as a person with any sense of freedom for people, as a person with any sense of human rights, you cannot ignore this. And if your eyes are not tearful, there's something lacking in you. Of course, as part of the Muslim Ummah, which we do not deny, we also feel doubly sorry for our Palestinian brothers and sisters. The issue is the issue was created in an intractable way. There are a number of world issues like that that shows no sign of any solution, because the creators of those problems have done it in such a way that if you solve one, the other one arises, or there's no peaceful solution to those things. I personally believe that, I've been observing this debate since 1960s, and I personally believe that talks will go on, but the plight of the Palestinians will be worse and worse and worse. But then the longest night ends, the worst kind of catastrophe also ends, good days come, at the end justice prevails, and we hope that if not in the very near future, in the foreseeable future, Palestinian people will get their independence, their human rights, their land, their houses back. In fact, their livelihood back. So with that kind of a hope, let me thank you all for your tremendous contributions, participations, and enlightening us through this seminar, through this webinar. And we will have more seminars on similar issues. Professor Sheikh Tawfiq and Bulbul Siddiqui, they are active people, and we get able help from Ambassador Shahidul Haq, Dr. Shakat Hussain, and other people. We want to be responsible citizens of the world, and we want to be a center of research and propagation, which will make significant input to the policy making of our government, other governments, and international bodies. Thank you all for your valuable time. Thank you all for being at NSU. I consider you being at NSU through Zoom or whatever. So on behalf of North South University, I express my gratitude to you and our heartfelt thanks to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your very comprehensive speech. I finally again thank all the panelists, the participants. We could see here that we had participants like our ambassadors, Bangladeshi ambassadors from Canada, High Commissioner, and also Bangladeshi ambassador from Netherlands, and also the Netherlands ambassador to Bangladesh also was there. I do really appreciate your participation, sir and madam, who have participated. I could not mention all the names. So again, by thanking you all for attending and also inviting you again on the 1st June on the Accountability and Justice webinar on Rohingya crisis, we are ending here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Very much.
Thank you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you.
And good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sakwat.
Nice learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.